Good morning and welcome to Ask the Expert. I'm Joe Taylor. This morning, another in the ongoing series of programs presented by the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning. The program, through the Northwest Institute of Research, oversees a grant from the Office of Child Development and Early Learning at the Pennsylvania Department of Human Services and the Department of Education. The goal of the program is to improve the outcomes for young children as they prepare for school. John Posa from the Pennsylvania Key is the host of the program and is with us throughout the series. And John, it's a cold day here in lovely Du Bois, Pennsylvania, but I feel some warm tropical air coming up from the phone.
Yes, we're so pleased this morning, Joe, to welcome Dr. Louis Losoncy, and he's coming to us from Vero Beach, Florida, overlooking the shore. And he says it's cold there. He says it's 60 degrees. And,
Poor guy.
Poor guy, yeah. But Dr. Lou, as he's affectionately known as, has been called America's Doctor of Encouragement. He's authored 28 books on encouragement, leadership, teamwork, and the role attitude has in our life. Dr. Lou has spoken in all 50 states and throughout 24 countries, and he has been written about in the Wall Street Journal, Psychology Today, and appeared on CNN and CBS. Welcome to the program, Dr. Lou.
So great to be there. I'm a Pennsylvania boy at heart, born in Reading.
I know.
In Bethlehem, and spent a lot of time working in central and western Pennsylvania.
That's for sure.
I just look forward to the all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl this year, John.
Oh, I'm hoping that's the way it ends up. I really am. But I got a chance to, just to let our listeners know, I got a chance to hear Dr. Lou and see him for the first time just a couple of weeks ago. He was in Beaver County, and he was speaking as the keynote speaker at a transitions training for early childhood professionals, and I was so impressed. And when they say that you're the doctor of encouragement, boy, I mean, I could not, I mean, that's the perfect phrase for you. But today I wanted to ask you, because we're talking, our program has to do with early learning. So I know this is a very broad question, but let's just start out with how parents and teachers can become more encouraging as a whole to children in bringing out their best. How can we start doing that, or doing that better than we already are doing?
Well, parents and anyone listening to the program, John and Joe, is already got a lead in the whole thing, because they care enough to listen to programs and to educate themselves and so forth. One of the most important things in my surveys with people about the most encouraging person in your life when you were a child and growing up, one of the things that came through so clearly is my teacher or my mother or father, they believed in me. And often people will use this word. They believed in me even more than I believed in myself. And so that the role of belief is at the cornerstone of the encouragement process. And by the way, why encouragement? Why is that important? To me, it's as valuable as love. The root word in encouragement is courage. And encouragement is the process of bringing out a person's courage. It might be a little child's courage to take on that new task, to tie their shoes, to try a math problem, to do something that looks threatening to them. Courage, Winston Churchill said, if only we could have one quality, it would be courage, because with courage, I could accumulate all others. So I look at a classroom, an ideal classroom, or an ideal family setting as one that is encouraging to children, that creates a climate, an atmosphere that will help the little child have the courage to go forward and to try new things, sometimes to accept things they can't change, rather than to get frustrated. So often what we see, John, we see a child right up front, this classic symptom of discouragement. They don't try. They don't try because they're afraid of failing. And we have to look at that and say, okay, we have to reroute conditions here where we put a value on emphasizing efforts, improvement, and progress, and we value that even more than the successful completion of a task. Now, why do I say that? Well, I say that because in looking at my patients and in studying children, oftentimes people will not try something that they ahead of time have concluded it's too tough, so they won't even attempt it. So I want to change the atmosphere. Instead of valuing perfection and success, I want to value growth and improvement and progress. In that way, the child's efforts will not be punished. They will be rewarded because they will feel good inside them that they are growing. And I'd emphasize that word growing because that's so more important. Growing is more important to me as an encourager than is succeeding.
That's great, Dr. Lou. Very, very, very good information that we can all use in our daily lives, obviously. And Dr. Lou, you were a teacher at one time. You grew up in Reading.
That's right.
And I remember when I was attending your keynote, you had kind of touched on some of the students that you had many years ago. And if you could kind of maybe touch on one of the stories you had,
Sure,
success
sure.
stories.
Well, there are a couple, John, that I think are interesting, would be interesting to my dear friends out there who are listening. One of them, besides believing in children, communicating, I believe in you, you can do it. Another factor that continually we saw in an encouraging person is the focusing in on the strengths and the assets. I'll never forget, I was a guidance counselor at a school called Amanda Stout, an elementary school in downtown Reading.
Right.
And every week, this little girl would bring down to me her spelling paper. Every week, 10 for 10 wrong. I mean, little Heidi just couldn't get it. And she had to write every word she did wrong like 10 times. And one week, Heidi came down to me. She said, Mr. Sachi, I got 9 wrong in my spelling. I said, aren't there 10 questions? Let me see your paper. And she had the word, let's say the word was cat. I don't remember what the word was, spelled correctly. And I looked at her. I said, honey, did you know that nobody in this whole wide world can spell that word cat better than you? She said, nobody? I said, nobody can spell it better than you. I said, there are a lot of people who will tie you, but nobody can get that any better than you can. She said, I'm pretty good at cat. I said, you can be pretty good at words that rhyme with the word cat or whatever the word was, like
right.
rat and bat and sat and fat and hat.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, after school, she came down to me and she had the word, whatever it was, cat, written 10 times just for me. Why? Because she had to? No, because she was good at it. She was competent at it. Another example, John, is a child who, in encouragement, some parents say to me, but their teachers say to me, this child doesn't have anything I can see as positive. I said, okay. I say, okay, take something that's negative, turn a liability into an asset. They said, what do you mean by that? Well, I said, give you an example of a time a little lad, a 5th grader, broke some windows. So I'm in the counselor's office. So earlier, yesterday, the day before, and the day I saw him, he was preached at by the minister, by the teacher, every one of them calling him a bad kid. Well, how do bad kids act? They act badly. What we call someone is what they tend to become. So I wasn't going to do that. So here's little Jimmy sitting in my office with his arms folded. I said, Jimmy, I understand you had broken some windows. He said, yeah. I said, how many windows did you break? He said, about 20. I said, wow, I know that big factory you broke those windows in. They must have 100 windows in there. You stopped at 20. You got control. My gosh, Jimmy, control is so important in life. Whatever made you stop after 20, wow, if you could do that. I said, do you think you could stop earlier? And he looked at me. He said, I could stop at 5. I said, oh, my gosh, look at this. If you could stop at 5, could you even do better than that? He said, I wouldn't have to break any window. I got up from my desk. I walked around the office. I shook my head. I said, oh, my gosh, I don't think I ever met anybody with your control. And yeah, a couple years later, he went to junior high school at the time, and he came back to me after school, and he said to me, I told him, I'm going to get a stone from my house, and I'm going to put it on my desk, and that's going to remind me, that's the control stone, and remind me of him and his ability to control. So when he's in junior high, he came back to me after school one day, and he's looking at my desk. He said, where's the control stone, Mr. Losoncy? I said, I took that home. He said, yeah, I'll bet there are a lot of kids who don't have much control down here in the elementary, right? Not like you, Jimmy, not like you.
Wow.
So the focus is always focusing in on strengths.
Right.
Sometimes the use of humor, but always emphasizing strengths. Why is that, John, that strengths would be important? Well, because if we want someone to develop a trait, we have to start treating them as though they already have it, that trait, whatever that trait might be. In the end, what is encouragement? Encouragement is modifying the way the person looks at themselves. Self-encouragement modification. Why? Because all of us, if Webster came to all of us and said, I want to put you in my dictionary next year, but I need a definition, what would we put in there? Well, that's our definition of ourself. That's a guideline to us subconsciously as to how to act. If I say I'm the kind of person who's shy, I go to a dance, my self-image is telling me you're too shy to dance, to go out and do that, so I don't. So we need to change the way a person looks at themselves so that they have a more positive view of themselves and they have a self-image that guides them that they're a can-do-it person. They can do it. They're good at this. They're good at trying new things. One other thing, John, if I could emphasize something very important, the difference between praise and encouragement. Could I talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Encouragement is different than praise. They're both positive, and they're both positive. But praise does have a little bit of a weakness, and let me explain it, based upon what I was just saying about self-image. Psychologists tell us that there are two types of motivation. One is extrinsic motivation. That is, I'm acting in such and such a way for the purpose of pleasing this outside source or getting praise from this outside source. Encouragement focuses in on the opposite, and that is intrinsic motivation. We want to build little children who are driven within inside themselves. They don't need us to be around in order to motivate them. Like I just saw at the fitness center this morning, people working out, stopping to work out until the trainer comes walking by, then they start working out again. That's extrinsic motivation. They're motivated for the wrong reason. We don't want children to be performing for the sake of their parents or the teacher, because their parents and their teacher are not always going to be there. Now, here's an example of the difference between praise and encouragement. Daddy, do you like this horsey that I just drew? Okay, here's praise. Yes, I like the horsey, so it's a very good horse. Good job. What am I teaching? You know your horse is good when someone else tells you it's good. You can't feel that inside. Now watch encouragement. Do you like this horsey that I drew? How do you feel about it, Brenda? I really like it. I especially like the nose and the tail. Encouragement. Sounds to me like you feel very proud of your ability to draw a horse, especially the tail, especially the nose. And you look like you were really having fun with drawing. Wow, what an artist. Notice what I'm giving her. I'm giving her an ability and an awareness inside of herself that she can feel good. and that she can be proud of something that she does, and she doesn't need this outside force. And I developed that concept, John, as a therapist because most of my patients, what I noticed was that they were lacking outside forces in life, or they lost them, telling them how good they are. So they thought the same person, because someone's not patting them on the back, is not as good as until someone pats you on the back. And the ultimate gift that we can give children is that gift of intrinsic motivation, along with encouragement, focusing in on strengths, turning negatives into strengths, noticing efforts, improvements, and progress, and communicating to the young child, I believe in you, even more than you believe in yourself, perhaps.
I'd like to ask a question about self-image, especially in infants and younger kids. In your opinion, how important are the tone of voice and facial expressions of parents when they interact with their infants? And at what age do you think a child begins to develop a self-image based on these parental cues?
Going to your first question, Joe, the facial expressions, the image, the tone, and listen to this. This is fascinating, Joe, and your question suggests that you may have even heard this statistic already. In communication, even with adults, only 7% is the verbal content. The rest is the demeanor, is the tone of voice. Just imagine these words, Joe. Daddy, do you love me? Yes, of course I love you. Now go outside and play. And you hear the words of course I love you, the verbal content, but you get the real tone. And that's what the child's reading. The child's reading the tone and the expression. A child, Joe, even at age 3 and 4, starts to get a feeling of competence as to whether they can do something, they can't do something, whether they should try, whether they're as good as somebody else, as not as good as somebody else. And that brings up another point. Never, ever, 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 ever compare your child to another child, a brother, a sister, or anyone. Never. Why? They have 2 different gallbladders. They have 2 different kidneys. They have 2 different belly buttons. They're 2 different people. I get asked the question, I have 2 children. Why aren't they the same? They grew up in the same family. No, they didn't grow up in the same family. One grew up with an older brother. One grew up with a younger brother. And that's one of the biggest factors that's impacting their life right now. Because as we know, most presidents of the United States were firstborn. Most people who have overthrown governments are secondborns, are rebellious, rebelling against the firstborn. Most people who are policemen or who get into law are middle children. Why? They're looking for justice. So that I'll find justice here. My older brother gets the privileges. My younger brother gets the protection. I'm going to find justice somewhere. I'm going into law. So it's fascinating, the role of the environment and the context that a child is being raised in as well.
We're speaking with Dr. Lou, the doctor of encouragement, on how parents and teachers can encourage their children to perform better. And Dr. Lou, one of your books, you've had many, but the one that, the title of it just kind of like blows me away. And I know you talked about this when I saw you. If it weren't for you, we could get along. How to stop blaming so you can start living. I thought, just that phrase itself is comical, but there's so much truth to it.
John, what happened with that is I asked myself one time when I was in practice with my patients, what's the difference between a happy person and an unhappy person? Can I boil it down? And it hit me one day, and if the listeners, see if you agree with this as listeners, unhappy people spend their life looking for things to blame to explain why they're unhappy, and they don't realize whatever they blame for their unhappiness is the thing that is taking charge of their life. In other words, a guy said to me the other day, this weather makes me miserable. I said, this weather doesn't even know your name. He's saying that this weather is the cause of my misery. Imagine being so fragile that the weather, that I wake up and the determiner of my day is going to be the weather or the traffic or the other things I face along the way. And so I wrote that book. And John, if anyone is interested in that book or others, please have them look me up and have them give me a call, and we'll get an autographed book out to them. May I give my number?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay, it's 610-334-1824. And it's Lou Losoncy. And if you are interested in some of the books, I'd like to send them right from myself and get your name on them and get nice Christmas presents for people, autographed books.
That's great. Dr. Lou, what are you working on right now? What's next on your agenda?
Well, right now I'm working on an approach to psychotherapy that is based on different philosophies of life. The Stoic philosophies, the Christian philosophies, the philosophies of existentialism, and how they fit in to helping a person. Because I began to believe that psychotherapy was really giving people a philosophical change in the way they looked at life. So I started to call psychotherapy attitude modification, because our attitude is the one gift we had in life to cope with every challenge that we face. And our attitude is a toolkit composed of our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions. Why would anybody ever want to use their thoughts, part of their attitude tools, to make their life more miserable? Our thoughts are here. Our thoughts are here to help us. Our thoughts are real things. They're as strong as bricks. They can build great buildings, or they can tear great buildings down. And so that's the book that I'm working on, the role of attitude in my life. And I do have a 3-hour tape on attitude modification. It's in color. It's a very effective approach that your whole family can listen to and watch.
Dr. Lou, I'll tell you, you've been an amazing guest. Your upbeat and inspiring message draws from a lot of your wisdom and philosophy and breakthroughs in psychology. It's
Thank you.
And you remind us all of our unlimited resources that we have inside for happiness and success, and in the form of our strengths, courage, attitude, belief, will, hope, optimism, and spirit. But attitude is so important, and encouragement. So in a minute, we have 1 minute left. Can you leave our listeners with a brief comment or encouragement that you would leave them for the day?
Sure. Here's what I'd like to say to anyone listening in. Please hear this sentence. Never make the mistake of limiting the visions of your future by something as narrow as the limited experiences of your past. Every day of your life, you wake up and you say to yourself, today is the most important day of my whole life. Why? Because this is the one I have now. My past is over. How shall I use this 86,400 seconds of today as an archaeologist digging up my past? Or shall I use the same day, one of my 30,000 days of life, as an architect constructing my future?
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic
Great
closing.
words to end on. Excellent.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Lou. We hope to have you back again. And happy holidays to you.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Joe. Happy grandfathering.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that's our program for today, a delightful one today. We'll be back in 2 weeks at this same time. In the meantime, you can go online to learn more at papromiseforchildren.com. For John Posa and the Northwest Regional Key Program for Quality Early Learning, I'm Joe Taylor. Thank you for listening, and have a great day.